Good morning. Uh, Welcome to the fifth in a series of franchise webinars. Just wanted to let you know about the previous webinars we've had, and if you have any interest, let us know. Send us an email, and we'd be glad to send you the uh, the connection to the webinar. The initial webinar was on just franchising in general, just basic franchise information. The second one was on the legal aspects of franchising. The third one was on financial aspects of franchising. And now we've got actually a business owner, a franchise owner, Capricia Turner with us. You there, Capricia?
Yeah, good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Glad to have you on here. And also, those that are listening, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter those in the chat box and we will address those questions as we go forward. Capricia is going to be answering questions as we go through and talk about how she got into her business. So let's proceed from here. So hang on a second. My screen doesn't want to move. There we go. Okay. So Capricia, franchise owner, she's in her sixth operating season with Mosquito Squad of Greater Indianapolis. She has 3 locations. She's on the Franchise Advisory Council for Mosquito Squad. She received a Brand Advocacy Award and Circle of Excellence Award, and she's also 19th year of serving in the Indiana National Guard, and we appreciate her service. Again, I'm Jim Gleason with Indiana Business Advisors. I'm a franchise consultant. And just kind of a comment about Capricia, I went to a conference last year where Mosquito Squad was there as one of the franchisors, and when I mentioned her name, everybody knew her. So she's well known within her brand. So good job, Capricia. So tell me a
I hope
little bit
that's good.
about it. It was good. I mean, they're very complimentary. They said you're a very nice person and you're a very good franchisee. So
Thank you.
anyway, when did you decide you wanted to own a business, Capricia?
I went to grad school while I was in the military, and I got a degree in business. And we were 12 years in service. We really kind of were ready to make that next step into the civilian market. We wanted to branch out, see what possibilities were out there. And so we thought, hey, we didn't really have any great ideas. So, what is this whole idea of franchising? And that's really kind of how we began the thought process.
Okay. So why did you decide to own a business? What was there about you'd been in the military for quite a while, and you making a career out of it. Why about halfway through your military career, or a little bit more than that, I guess, you decided you wanted to own a civilian business?
Well, the military is not going to last forever. And we kind of saw that end of the road, and we're ready to kind of prepare ourselves for the next step. We wanted that professional development. I wanted to kind of see what I could do in the civilian market. Like I said, I wanted to see how I could help other people, and how I could become a better leader in my community. I also enjoyed the opportunity for the flexibility. I saw, we had a young family, and I wanted to kind of make sure that I had the opportunities to do something that would fit within a time schedule that I saw best fit for my family.
Being in the military, did you feel that had prepared you to be a business owner? And if so, how?
I think it definitely did, in the sense of just the desire to never to quit. There are days that are hard days, but you have to be disciplined and just remain confident in what you're doing, and that you're going to do it, and you're going to see it through. I think that's probably the biggest thing for us, just to never quit.
Okay. What about the leadership aspect of the development in the military? Do you think that had any influence on feeling that you could be a business owner and deal with employees and customers and all those
I think
various
it did,
things?
because I've learned how to talk to different people in different walks of life. Obviously, I have 18-year-old kids that are working for me, and I have 62-year-old retirees working for me, and those different generations, how to communicate with them and deal best with what their needs are something that the military has definitely given us, and just the desire to want to serve them, so that they'll want to serve our company and our community best. I think was something the military definitely gave us.
That's an interesting comment, from the 18-year-old to the 60-year-old, because there's certainly a difference in how you communicate with the various
Absolutely.
generations. Yeah, Yeah. And
Absolutely.
also in how they look at employment too, I believe.
Absolutely. You know, the 60-year-old, shows up for work every day, doesn't ever have any problem showing up for work. They take a lot of pride in it. And the 18-year-old really is interested in saving up the money. They need the money for college, but this isn't a career for them. And so you're really having to push them from a different perspective, uh, which can be challenging, but we managed to find a way.
Great, great. Okay. So why a franchise? You mentioned that you wanted to look at a franchise. Why specifically franchise?
I didn't have any good ideas, to be honest. Um, I thought, wow, I want to be a business owner. Well, what's successful out there? And one of the things that I had seen for franchising was just it was a proven business model. It was something that I could easily replicate. And I needed, being in the military, I need that structure. They basically give me a manual, and the military is all about manuals, all about here's your publication, here's how you go and do it and execute. And for me, franchising has definitely been that same concept. We have a corporate support system, and they tell you this is how you do it, this is how we recommend it, and you can go out and if you follow those, for the most part, if you follow those recommendations, you're going to be successful.
That's an excellent point. I've been doing the franchise consulting for somewhere around 12 years now, and throughout the franchise world, veterans, military people are looked at as being typically excellent franchisees because you're used to following processes, you're used to following systems,
Sure,
because you've experienced how they work, and that's why
absolutely.
a franchise works.
Yep, absolutely. We definitely enjoy those models. I'm not a big outside of the box thinker. I can be after a while, but I definitely enjoy having the puzzle pieces laid out before me. That doesn't mean other franchisees and people that aren't, big picture thinkers can't go off and do some of their own things. So that's just one of the ways that franchises really appealed to me.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I was on another webinar not long ago where it was franchise consultants, and we were talking about walking people through the franchise process that you've experienced, Capricia. And one of those things that you did was you talked to other franchisees before you ever became a
Hmm.
franchisee yourself. And
Absolutely.
one of the consultants said one of his candidates talked to a franchisee that was not doing well. And when they talked to that franchisee, the franchisee said, "Well, when I was following the system for a year, I was doing really well, and then I decided to try to do it on my own,
Hmm.
and now things were falling apart on me." So the
Right?
point being is that
Exactly.
the processes and systems work.
Absolutely. Completely
Yeah,
agree with you. And we
yeah,
have the same people in our own systems that we see that try and kind of recreate the wheel. But when you have 200 plus locations proving that this model works, you're going to want to follow that.
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, what I will tell folks that I'm working with, if you've got a better idea, don't spend the money on the franchise. Use that money to start your own thing. But if you're willing
Oh yeah.
to consider a process or system, franchise, it's a way to. This gets back to some of the franchise basics, but it's a way to mitigate your risk, reduce the
Yep.
risk of being a business owner. So
Absolutely.
excellent. Yeah. So had you considered buying an existing business? Why or why not?
Um, we honestly, Jim, we didn't consider buying an existing business. We were just getting into that idea of being a business owner. And to be honest, we didn't really have the capital for it. And I know that you could probably dive into that a little bit too, but we were, 12 years military, straight out of college, young family. We were just trying, getting afloat into that concept. And we definitely didn't have the revenue in our back pockets to try and buy somebody out.
Yeah, and just to that point, their existing businesses they range in price all over the board, but certainly if you're looking at a business that's generating decent cash flow, there's going to be some cost involved with that. The other thing with that is, as we just talked about the franchise, they have the systems and processes in place. When you're buying an existing business, that's kind of a crapshoot, if you will. You don't know if that owner is going to have those systems and processes in place, and if so, how long will that owner stick with you in order to make those things work and make that transfer of that information?
Absolutely. That's
So,
correct.
yeah, okay. How did you connect with me, Capricia?
Well, Jim, you and I, if I recall, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, I worked for an employment program for the Guard, so I was helping soldiers connect with employers. And part of that process is we did job fairs and things like that. And this was back during kind of the employment crisis back, 2011, 2012, 13.
Hmm.
And your name came across my desk as far as a franchise consultant. And I was like, well, franchise consulting, what's that? And so honestly, I just called you and I, started talking to you about it and was like, that's really awesome. I think I want to go through that. And that's really kind of how our relationship took off. And we've honestly been great colleagues ever since. You're a great mentor.
Thank you very much. I'll give you your 20 bucks later.
I know, right? I know. Still waiting for my coffee.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do recall that you called me up. I think we had lunch and started talking
Mhm.
about it, and
Yep,
we're able to kind of uh, make things come to fruition here. So,
absolutely.
explain the process of selecting the business you decided to purchase.
Um, well, I mean, we wanted to obviously make sure that, the process fit for us. Um, Going through what we call in Mosquito Squad the discovery process, talking to other franchisees, like you said, we went through almost like a 7-year long profit and loss statement, making sure that what we could put into it, we would get the results out that we were hoping for. And we just did a lot of testing with them. I probably talked to 5 or 6 other franchisees, mostly all in the Midwest, from large franchises that were doing, $5, $6 million a year in revenue to the small, starter franchisee that was doing just over 100,000. So I really kind of tested them all, asked them a lot of the questions about, what kind of flexibility you have. We're a seasonal business, right? So that was important to me to understand, how do you bank money for the off season? What's your training program for your technicians? How do you employ them during the off season, or what's your turnover rate, things like that. And so really just testing that and making sure that it was something that was going to fit really well for our family. And ultimately it was, and we've been able to, obviously be really successful in that model.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah. Just a little bit from my perspective as a franchise consultant. There's also, if you will, testing. There's a survey that we use in the franchise consulting world to help kind of give us an objective look at our candidates to see, how they might fit with the franchise, because not everybody's made for franchising, and through
True.
that a survey, it also helps us kind of figure out which franchise or franchises, or at least franchise industries, the person might
Hmm.
be a good fit for, because
Oh yeah,
you use that term fit a number of times, and really, one of the biggest ways that people are successful in franchising is finding a business that is a good fit for them.
sure.
Conversely, if somebody gets in a business that's not a good fit, we often see that as a major factor for not doing very well. So
Yeah.
that
And
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I was
No.
just going to say, and I think I remember through that testing, remembering when Mosquito Squad came up as a possibility, one of the things that was great for us was it didn't require a brick and mortar facility at first. It had that lower startup cost. And I remember thinking this wasn't something that was going to be something, I was just creating something. Everybody hates mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are never going to go anywhere. And this is something year over year had a revolving revenue stream that I was going to be able to count on and build into, especially as, the brand concept came out.
Hmm.
So it was in that moment that, like, I hate mosquitoes. Let me fix something I hate and help people, enjoy their backyards again. So that's one of
Yeah.
the things that really kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah, yeah, and then the other part of that was spending time with you and Ethan, talking about what's important to you family wise, and
Hmm.
lifestyle and all those kind of things, because that's important in looking at a business. Is get a business that's going to fit with your family, your needs, your lifestyle, what you want on your future. So those are all
Absolutely.
important things. And then we talked about the financial wherewithal, and if I recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, Capricia, that when you and Ethan and I initially met, because being in the military, you don't make a whole bunch of money. I was concerned about the financial ability to be able to afford a franchise, and I think even at that point, I thought, I don't think I have anything that's going to fit financially. And then you called me back up after that and said, "Hey, can you find something for us? And so I did an investigation on it because Mosquito Squad was part of my inventory back then, but I, in my limited thinking, was thinking in the Midwest, a business spraying for mosquitoes, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I spent some time, got on the phone with Mosquito Squad and found out some of their best franchisees were in Chicago and Michigan. And so I thought, well,
Absolutely.
if they can do well there, I would think Central Indiana would work. And so made that introduction, and you did the research, and now that's where we're at. So kind of interesting.
Absolutely. It's kind of an interesting thought. We have our Texas franchisees that treat year round, same with Florida, some of the southern states, but you don't really recognize that, those people don't necessarily appreciate their yards like we do, and we only get to enjoy them 3 months out of the year, 4 months out of the year. And so that's one of the reasons that we've grown so rapidly, and this concept has grown so rapidly in this region. And I think that's obviously one of the reasons it was a good fit for us as well.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, that's one of the points they made to me is that we have limited time outside to enjoy the yards, and yeah, those little pesky things that come up and they like land on your skin and make you itch are not a lot of fun to deal with.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
talk about the financing process. The whole thing of how you were able to finance this and big banks versus local banks and those kind of things.
Yeah. So as we kind of went through the process, I knew I was going to have to approach a couple of banks about getting startup loans, be an initial loan and potentially a line of credit, which is the avenue I wanted to go at. I actually went and spoke to 3 different banks that were large banks, PNC, Chase, and the third large bank is kind of spacing my mind right now. But all 3 of them, even though I had a really great business plan, was able to show that this franchise concept was great, that we had good credit scores, that we were good for it. We had some collateral. None of them would accept us based on the fact that they didn't feel that we had enough pest control experience, which was true, and then they just weren't really willing to take a risk on us. Their decisions, though, that business plan was basically sent off to the state of Ohio, to a regional office that was going to make that decision. And once actually connecting with you, and I stepped into a small local bank in my local area, we actually used State Bank of Lisbon, was the bank that we chose to go through. The decision makers are small branch managers in a conference room. And so I was able to walk in, talk to them about my business plan, lay it out, much like I had with the big bank, but I actually was able to form a relationship with them, and they earned my business, and they still have my business, 6.5 years later. But they were willing to make and take those risks at a local level, whereas at a bigger bank wouldn't take those risks. And they gave me both the full-size loan as well as the line of credit that I was asking for at good rates too.
Good, good. And that's an excellent point because what we do find is small local banks or regional banks are typically the best ones to work with because of that personal relationship.
Absolutely.
It's not a matter of just getting the right box checked on the form. It's an actual
Yep.
face-to-face kind of situation. And when you talked there about the larger banks, and you said industry experience, it's kind of an interesting thing. In franchising, statistically, only about 25% of people that are in a franchise business actually have industry experience. A lot of franchises prefer you not have industry experience for the simple fact that if you do have that experience, sometimes you don't want to use their system because you think you know how to do it. But
Sure.
in terms of the banking industry, back when you were looking at franchising, most banks wanted the potential franchisee to have that industry experience. What's happened since then, and this is important for the folks that are listening, if you're thinking about going into a franchise business and how you're going to finance that, is most banks today, particularly the local banks, they're not looking specifically for industry experience, but they're looking for related experiences such as having management experience, customer service experience, the broader types of experience rather than specific to the industry. So that's an important aspect as well.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's one of the things that small bank recognized 6 years ago. And I think it really benefited us.
Yeah, yep. So talk about starting and growing the business. What kind of training support did you have, and how did you manage to get your business, which were next couple slides we're going to talk about?
Well, I mean, it's actually kind of funny. One of the things, starting the business, I was like, okay, what should I do? So I hired my cousin who was a sophomore in college at Ivy Tech, and we ran it out of my uncle's garage that first season. He had everything that we needed, size and space wise. Um, we quickly, obviously grew out of that space within the season, and started renting a garage out in Castleton. We use Indeed for most of our hiring of our seasonal employees. It's worked really well for us. Um, and then we just really, train and support them. We do have a higher turnover rate. So obviously because of the seasonality of it, but we just have a really structured training program and a support system that I've put in place for those technicians, that has seemed to really service us really well and made us obviously, in my opinion, definitely one of the top franchisees nationwide.
What about the training support you've received from Mosquito Squad, particularly initially and as you've grown?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So initially we signed our documents in October, I think, of 2013. And by December, we flew down to Richmond, went through a 5-day training program where we initially sat down and looked at, their CRM and, what's the system that we were going to house our customers in, what kind of communication systems they had with, email, what are the recommended vendors that they would recommend for us to use for truck wraps and signage, and things like marketing. So they really kind of pounded us 5 days of hard training. And then once we came home, and in that first year, the very first 2 seasons, they actually have somebody that comes out to your location, just to make sure that you're doing things by that corporate standard that they're looking for, and that you're staffed appropriately, that you know what you're doing. And that's one of the things I really appreciated, because we're able to, I use corporate like they're my highest paid employee. I call them all the time. I use them for their IT support, their operations. Anytime we have some random bug that I don't know what it is, I'm calling them and asking them. And that's what they're paid to do. You are their customer. So if you have a good franchisor that recognizes that, they've absolutely been phenomenal for us. And I continue to have a great relationship with them.
Have you found that, or what have you found, I guess would be the right way to state it, since you've grown and you're now a more mature franchise, have you found that you still need that support, or is it less necessary? What do you think?
I think in different areas have shifted. Whereas first, we were talking about garage setup and how to
Hmm.
train my employees. I don't necessarily need those things anymore. What I do need is, all right, how do I deal with different marketing campaigns? Because
Hmm.
things are changing. How do I brand myself? Am I branding myself correctly? Am I providing, now that we've established ourselves within the market, we want to know, how do we offer additional add-on services that we weren't initially doing because we were trying to get our feet wet. So those are the kind of things that they year over year continue to support us with. And everybody hates IT, so I'm always using them. So from the from the IT perspective, and the communication perspective as well. So.
Yeah, and kind of an interesting thing is with a franchise, and you get the luxury of paying them every month a royalty, and so it
Mhm.
sounds like for that royalty, you're getting ongoing help through
Support.
what's changing in marketing and how to really get out there and be effective in obtaining customers.
Well, one of the cool things about marketing for a franchisor, and I've talked to people that have bought their own business and they're trying to create graphics. Well, I don't have to do that. I basically have a marketing shop. I obviously have a national marketing manager, but they are constantly upgrading new marketing materials online. I just go on the shop and I click the different pieces that I like, and then I can utilize my own vendor. Some franchises aren't like that, but for me, I can utilize my own vendor of my choosing and go to them and get the best pricing. And that's been absolutely phenomenal. That's all they do all day long, and you can just go shop it right there, at your computer, which is great.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just a real clear example of what we talked about from the beginning here, the processes and systems that they have in place, the things that they help the franchisees be successful, so it reduces that risk of being in business because you don't have to be the creative person because they have the
Yep.
creative person for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our,
Yeah.
our tagline is the only good mosquito is a dead one. And it's, what my billboards are all around town. It's the mailers that we send out to everybody. And, I didn't come up with that, corporate did. And they made the piece look great and clear, and it's something that we can replicate every season. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My daughter and son-in-law live on the northwest side of Chicago, and I remember driving by O'Hare Airport one day, and there's a big old Mosquito Squad sign staring me in the face. So,
Bite me. Yeah.
yep,
Yep.
there's a story that goes with that. But anyway, so
Yeah.
okay. Anyway, so you talked a little bit about you used Indeed and you hired your cousin. Um, are you still using Indeed? What are you doing now? Because I know we've had some discussions, you and I, about some of the difficulties of employees getting people to show up and to be effective
Hmm.
and to do what they need to do.
Yeah, so basically what I do is I do still use Indeed. I use Facebook this year as well, which is a great avenue for me. A lot of kids are scrolling their phones, and so you can kind of target them for jobs, and they can do a quick apply. I definitely found that to reach out to them within a 1 to 2 business day period. Sometimes if they applied, I called them within 10 minutes. In a job market where you can get a job in any warehouse,
Hmm.
it's important for me to kind of get to them first. Indeed has been a great resource. I love that I can kind of turn it off and turn it back on as I see fit. So I always do a big employee push for hiring in beginning of March or April. I'm always seeking out my college students. So there's a couple of different job boards that you can use for college students as well that we've utilized. Really word of mouth from our college students from years past. This year we had 6 guys that worked for us, and they all went back to school during a certain period of time, and we're asking them for referee, hey, bring your buddies back with you next year. And then we'll do another and push in July and August to kind of offset losing up 1 or 2 those college kids. And then we kind of go skeleton crew for probably about the next 6 weeks. And then I also partner with a couple of other companies during the off season to get those guys work during the off season so that they'll return to me. And usually I get about 3 or 4 guys that come back to me every year. And
Okay.
I mean, it sounds small, but 12 guys, 13 guys, when you have 3 or 4 solid guys that return to you at the beginning of the season, they can train those guys. So
Okay.
it works out really well.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about when you're full season, when things are really rocking and rolling. How many techs do you have out there? What's the size of your employee crew, and what are you doing as the owner during that time?
Well, for the most part, we're running around 12 technicians. Peak of the season, around 4th of July is kind of our peak. We guys are starting around 7 a.m. And they usually generally, have a 7-8 hour workday when they get back. Staffing wise, inside the office, I have an office manager that's running, and then I'll have an evening shift salesperson, because you'd be surprised, a lot of people call in, from 4 to 7 p.m. So I'll have somebody that comes in around noon or 1. And then I have another lady that focuses primarily on the CRM communications, and she takes sales calls as well. So we'll really have three ladies or 3 employees that work in our office during the peak season. And then I happen to be blessed to find a couple of people that were okay with not getting as many hours during the off season. One's a teacher, so that worked out really well, and the other one's a stay-at-home mom, so that works out pretty well for her as well. So for me, during those peak seasons, I'm both everywhere and nowhere. I really have tried to focus on the last 2-3 years of giving my employees, especially my 2-3 managers, the opportunity to kind of run the business in my absence. Being in the military, I went to Afghanistan last year in the peak of our season, July, August, September. Didn't get back till October, so I needed them to be able to function without me. And so kind of quietly stepping back and seeing, what kind of decisions they made without me being there was really important. But one of the things I'm really watching is, my KPIs, looking at my P&Ls, making sure the guys are doing what they're doing. They're not taking 45-minute long lunch breaks at Wendy's, things which they do, and you have to catch them on, making sure that they're everybody's doing what role they've been assigned to do is really kind of my role during the peak season.
Okay. In case somebody doesn't know, what's KPI, Capricia?
Oh, sorry, it's a key point indicator. So
Okay.
I'm looking and seeing, how much product I'm using every day, how many hours each guy is working, how many miles he's driving, just small things like that to see how my profit is floating day by day.
Okay. And I think what you described is a good example of what we in the franchise industry talk about is that in a franchise, it's important to separate the function of the owner from the function of the business. The function of your business is spraying for mosquitoes, but you as the owner, you're not out there spraying for mosquitoes. You're out there running the
No,
business, so you're working on the
correct.
business, not in the business.
That is correct. Absolutely. So I generally will only go out and spray at the beginning of the season when we have that first initial hire. Sometimes around the 4th of July if it gets because everybody wants treated. And other times just so that those boys know that I can still treat. And I've had those long days too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah. But the only way that you can effectively grow as a business owner is to
absolutely.
have other people doing
That is correct.
working in the business and not being out there, because if you were the only one spraying mosquitoes, your business would be not
You're
very
not,
big right now.
you're absolutely, somebody's got to be there to answer the phones.
Yeah,
That was one of the big things that we learned early on. Absolutely. We've had franchisees try to do that, try and do both, and it doesn't work out well for you.
yeah, yeah. Excellent. Okay. Um, we talked some about this, but talk a little bit more about marketing, business, providing the services. Just give a good overview of all that kind of thing.
Well, marketing wise, we use a variety of marketing from Google to direct mail campaigns, as well as shared mailers. So we have a variety of marketing that we target. We've talked about how we utilize our franchise systems shop to kind of pick those
Hmm.
ads.
Hmm.
And so, we're spending probably anywhere from 75 to $90,000 a year on marketing for our 3 locations.
Mm,
Um, and that spreads out over obviously the entire greater Indy area.
hmm.
But we're just tapping into every single resource. We're finding out who our demographic that we need to target is. It's moms with kids with yards
Hmm.
and a certain income that can afford the service, right? So because
Right.
it's an extra service. So knowing what that customer is really important to us. And now that we've been around long enough, we can zoom in and say, okay, look, we have 75 customers in this 2 mile radius. Let's start targeting more customers in that 2 mile radius. And you can do that with every door direct mail campaigns. So that's been something that's been really big for us. That's been successful over the last couple of years.
Excellent. Hey, and do you track as far as what's effective in marketing and know
Yeah.
what's producing what?
Yeah. So every new customer that calls us, our CRM I'm required to type in what's the lead source. And then at the end of every campaign, I can obviously run that and see what was the customer acquisition cost for each one of those campaigns that I spent. And then we track it, from a campaign perspective, as we also do, we utilize CallRail, which is call tracking service. So we can actually see how many phone calls came in for each campaign that we run as well. And both are great resources. You may not close every sale, so they wouldn't get reported, but I can go back to CallRail and see how many phone calls we took for each campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And when you started, were you primarily spraying for mosquitoes, and have you expanded your services since you started?
Yeah, so we first started spraying just mosquitoes and ticks, and now we're pretty much an all outdoor pest control company. So we have gnats and fleas as an add-on service, spiders and stink bugs. Um, I'm trying to think, flies, so we can treat for flies as well. We
Mm,
are a part of the Pollinator Protection Act, so we definitely care about our pollinators. So we won't treat for any pollinators as well, and we train our guys to obviously avoid pollinated areas,
mm.
blooming flowers, things like that. So, but we've been able to really, expand into the commercial district as well. So not just residential customers, but large commercial properties, event venue locations has been a nice revenue stream for us as well. So, but really just getting started in that residential area and getting our name out there, it kind of brought those big customers to us.
I'm not sure if I'm thinking of the right thing here, Capricia, but doesn't Mosquito Squad participate in something for eliminating malaria and things like that in third world countries?
Yeah, so we do a program called Malaria No More. It's a nonprofit organization where when I send you an invoice, you have an option to click or unclick that $1 proceed that goes to Malaria No More. And then we also do for every new customer that we get every year, we donate $1, which doesn't sound like a lot, but $1 saves a life in things like Cameroon, where, mosquitoes aren't just a nuisance. They kill children every day. So,
Yeah.
if we're donating $700 a year to that
Okay.
organization, we're saving 600-700 lives. So
And then you take
absolutely.
that times that what two or 300
Yep.
franchisees, that becomes
Absolutely.
significant. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So here's you talking about where you started out and where you're at today. So kind of talk about that. We've kind of hit some of those things, but just give an overview on that as well.
Yeah. So our first year obviously was kind of a slow year. We did 75,000 that first year. We had no idea what we were doing. We had no customers to market to. We were just kind of throwing it out there. And hey, we made some money. We were almost in the black, so we were excited. So a couple years later, we bought out another franchisee that was getting ready to retire, that was already here in the Indy area. And then, 6 years later, I have 3 franchise locations. We're doing close to 600,000 in this 6th year. Just really successful. We went from my small closed garage to renting a garage with some office space, and just recently purchased. We actually purchased and are in the process of remodeling a space that is going to be a standalone structure, so that now I own something in addition to um, the company, and I'm not just paying rent and paying somebody else to, you know,
Yeah.
line their pockets, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So you started out basically home based in your uncle's garage, and now you've
Uh-huh.
got a little bit of property that you're owning that you will be able to
Yep.
operate your business from over the 6 years you've been in business. So
Yep. Absolutely.
how's that feel as a business owner?
Well, it feels like I did something right and I didn't do it wrong. So,
Yeah.
I think it's really rewarding to see that we've built this. We've built something from nothing, even though it's a franchise concept. That I took a brand, a concept that nobody had really heard of in the Indianapolis area, and now we have, 3, 4 other major competitors that have come into the area. And competition's not a bad thing. I take a lot of pride in that. I take pride in the fact that we're doing well and that we're protecting families here. And Mosquito Squad is now, kind of a known name. Mosquito control is a known concept in the Indy area, and I take pride in that. And my kids love that I'm the boss. Our daughters are 6 and 8 now, and when they were 0 and 2 when we started. So to be able to show them that I'm doing this, that I'm the boss, if you will, is something that I think is important for them to see, that they can make money for themselves. They don't have to make money for other people. And that's probably my biggest reward out of it, and how I can also, obviously serve my community with some of that money that I make as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's neat, and that you've been able to do those type of things and to show that and to continue to grow. So yeah, excellent. So um, what's the biggest reward? And I guess maybe you'd already talked about that just now, but and the biggest challenges.
Well, I'll go with kind of the biggest challenges first. So I kind of go into the rewards. The biggest challenges are you're always watching your bank account. Um, I think that's kind of one of the stressors of being a business owner. Um, Challenges is, finding the right employees.
Hmm.
I stay up at night worrying about the rain that's coming in tomorrow and how am I going to treat and should we treat. So just the daily, the grind of running the business can sometimes be challenging. The seasonality of the business can be challenging, but it also kind of flips back into my biggest reward. So October 15th, when everybody's still going to work every day, I start working from home, and I'm in my sweatpants, and I'm just reviewing how we did this past year for about 3 months.
Hmm.
And that's was a huge reward for me. I was essentially able to be a stay-at-home mom for several months out of the year while the girls were growing up. So it was a huge reward for us. Um, I loved, obviously, the kind of the professional development I've had over the last 6 years. I'm just amazed where I've come. I'm not sure everybody would tell you that, but I promise that, I've definitely come really far. But I think it's, just something that's really huge, and something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, yeah, and just as a comment, having been there, watching you from the beginning to where you are now, you have really grown and matured, and you've become, an excellent business owner. So Something that you mentioned just a second ago about, there's other mosquito sprayers companies in the area, and because it's profitable, and it's, and that's a thing that anybody that's going to go into business has to understand. If there's a business that's going to be profitable, there's going to be competition, and what your
Hmm.
job is to figure out how to deal with the competition and maintain and grow your business in spite of the competition. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just part of it, and we'll have a new company pop up, and sometimes they go away, and sometimes they don't. You just have to. For me, I chose to have a good relationship with them, and communicate with them, and I think everybody does it a little bit differently, but for me, it's something that's really worked.
good, good, okay. So that's it. Do you have any additional comments or thoughts that you want to share, Capricia, before we ask for questions, or we'll ask for questions now as well?
No, yeah, I think, there's just the biggest thing is if somebody's really thinking about franchising versus, starting their own concept is franchising definitely works, especially, if you're looking at the right franchisor. And I truly do believe in this concept, and I believe people can be successful. So, just got to kind of follow your dream and, make the decision if it's what's best for your family.
Okay, we have at least one question. It was asked if this can be operated on a semi-absentee basis.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we have several franchises, especially larger franchisees that do operate it semi-absentee. And that's kind of one of the things I touched base with when I went to Afghanistan last year. I had no communication with my staff for almost 3 months, mainly because I didn't want to stress out about it. But I basically set everything forth for them to be successful from a financial standpoint, and they were able to operate it on their own.
Okay, we've got another question. What kind of company do you partner with to give your employees work during the off season?
So we've done landscape companies. We've done this year. We're doing a company that's an outdoor lighting company, and they have
Hmm,
a holiday lighting. So as soon as we flip off, in fact, we'll even introduce them to some of our customers and let them know, like, hey, here's a potential for an outdoor lighting, Christmas
okay,
tree lighting concept. And so as soon as we basically turn off in October after we winterize everything, I have four, I think, technicians that I'm going to send their way. And they'll stay employed with them until about February, potentially even March, and I'll pick them back up mid-March, get them trained and ready to go by April.
okay, excellent. Okay, I think that's it, Capricia. I appreciate your time today, and like I said, it's been fun watching you grow your business and maturing as a business owner, and having some phone calls that were interesting over the last six
Mhm.
years, and having just some
Sure.
discussions, and meeting at Chick-fil-A and watching your girls play in the the
That's
play
it. That's
area.
what it's all about.
So, and here's
Yep.
contact information if anybody wants to get a hold of me, or you want to be able to, we'll be sending this out to everybody that was on the webinar today. And then if you want to get any of the previous webinars, please send me an email and we'll get that to you. So thanks, Capricia, and have a good day.
Thanks, Jim. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.